You're listening in to Rima. That is Matthew West and Do Something. Thanks so much for joining us here on Rima. It's 29 minutes after 10 o'clock. Joining me on the show now, the wonderful Tanya Unkovic. Tanya, we were just talking about the importance of doing nothing sometimes. I thought that song was most fortuitous. I thought that song was most fortuitous to come out of, because we've just been discussing how sometimes it's good just to blob, right?
Well, it is. And I called it an achievement detox, didn't I? Just learning how to actually not feel that I've always got to be out there busy, working, achieving, earning, whatever it is that you feel you've got to keep doing. And it's part of my Lenten thing on surrender.
Yeah.
So this week it didn't feel like my teeth were being pulled out, which was a good thing.
So it's actually... You're actually surrendering and learning how to just relax by the sound of things.
Well, yeah, and to do things that I love. I love to write. So I'm writing, but then I feel this, better go and do something, better housework or whatever, So just, that's been my week, and it's been a much better week than last week, I'm pleased to say.
Oh, that is so good to hear, Tanya. Well, we're not talking about this today. What we are talking about are role models in our lives, particularly female ones, because this week was indeed, or at the beginning of the week, it was indeed International Women's Day. So celebrating that fact and taking a look at some of the great lessons we've learned from the women and the role models in our lives. So let's get into it. Who have been some of your role models, Tanya?
Well, look, the interesting thing is you've asked me this question before when I was growing up, and I could never come up with one. I could never come up with a role model. But as you and I have been talking about the whole detox thing and thinking about my mother and what I learned from her, one of the great things I learned from her was how to work hard. So I suppose, that's just made me think about that now as you and I have been talking. So some great lessons in learning how to work hard, but some not so good things is not knowing how to shut off, really. So, But, when I was thinking about, who did I have as role models, I'm going to fess up, and it's probably something I never thought I'd want to air on air.
Okay.
But I used to have I had this little fantasy role model, and it was actually me, my adult self. And I used to take myself into this place when I was a young girl growing up, and I had this belief of Tanya the businesswoman, and it's really interesting that I used to have this little story in my mind, and that little role model in my mind was something that I generated actually even before I was 10. And I used to hold this belief about me as a young girl on who I was going to be one day. So in a way, I suppose I was my own role model, wasn't I? But it was just this little imaginary person in my mind of Tanya, the adult woman who was a businesswoman. And that was kind of what kept me going, if I was to be truthful and fess up. There you go.
Yeah, no, and that's not a bad thing to fess up to, because I guess, you're inspired by this image of a successful businesswoman, and you can see yourself in that way as well. So, kind of creating a future for yourself. And in a sense, you've kind of lived up to that, haven't you?
Well, I suppose I have, and that was probably one of the things that gave me so much guts, I suppose. As a 24-year-old, I think it was 26 actually, I left a really good job to go out and be my own boss.
Right.
And, I now look back and go, actually, I was gutsy to do that. And it maybe was just that little belief that I had in me growing up that this was what I was going to do. So, it was an okay thing to do for me back then. Would I have the confidence to do that now? I don't know, but there you go.
Yeah. So when we're talking role models, we're talking people that are probably good for us to look up to, right? We can have role models that aren't brilliant, can't we? Like I look back on my past, and I just had this thing for, I hate to use this word because it's a bit, it's not nice, but sort of movie stars who had very tragic lives, and
Right.
they were just fascinating to me. They were beautiful, they were well loved in the public arena, but they just had so much tragedy, and I just found that absolutely fascinating. And in a sense, they were kind of a role model, but not in a great way, if you know what I mean.
What if you flip that around and they were people who had tragic lives, but they overcame it? So maybe it was that. How did they do it that drove you to them? You know?
I'm not sure, Tanya, but it's fascinating. And it's interesting you say, about good role models in your life, and your mum being a really great role model when it comes to working hard. I would say that would be the case of my mum as well. Very, very hard worker. And I learned so many of the things that I actually have learned to love today. Like, she's always making jams, so I'm always making jams these days and things like that. And I really did learn that off my mum. So let's take a look at our role models and, ask that question. What made us look up to them, and how did they make a difference to our lives then and now in particular?
I believe that a lot of the role models that we look up to help us build our own resilience. They help us actually be able to look in the mirror and go, if they can do it, then so can I. If they've got what it takes to do it, then maybe if I can just copy a bit of what they did, I can do it too. I do believe that we've all got a superhero in all of us. We just haven't seen it yet. So, that's where role models are really good, because it helps us to see something in ourselves. Someone else has ignited it, even if it is simply on the television or in a magazine or something like that. It sparks that fire inside of us, and then it's up to us to keep it lit, to then take the action and find more different role models even to help us in other areas of our lives.
So what would you look for in a role model then?
I would personally look for someone who has the same types of beliefs and values as myself, which means knowing my own, also knowing what I want in my life. So if I have a vision for my life that I want to be able to do this, and leave this sort of legacy, then I would look to someone else who has already done something like that. So for me, they would be older. They would also be someone who was gutsy and has found their own voice and doesn't want to sit and feel silent or be silenced. So those are some of the things for me personally. What about you?
Yeah, look, I would say very, very similar. And it's interesting, you mentioned the different places you can find role models, whether it be TV or whatever. I've just recently read a book, and it's purely fiction. It's called The Four Winds, but the female lead in that particular book, didn't believe in herself to begin with, but through a series of different events, gained such courage and resilience. And, I actually found that incredibly inspiring. And in one sense, look, she is a fictional character, but, based probably on the author's, collection of memories of different people. That was a role model for me and totally inspired me. Just that courage that this particular character had was just, pretty inspiring. So talking role models today, now, has this changed for you, Tanya? You talked about that sort of the sort of forecast of what Tanya would look like when she was an adult, and you sort of had that as a child. But now as an adult, who would your role model be today?
I often think of the late Mother Teresa, actually, and how much she gave and how much she gave to people who so needed her. How she helped people to come to the end stage of their life and leave this life with dignity. Yeah, that would probably be my, the first person that comes to mind.
Yeah. I mean, and such a beautiful role model as well. What I like with this whole discussion about role models is actually turning it around and saying, are we role models for others? And asking that question, who are we a role model for? Is it someone in our family? Is it our kids? Is it our workmates or, whatever? is that something that you would encourage people to aspire to be a role model?
Oh, without question. I mean, every time we step out of our homes, every time we put something on social media, we're being an example to whoever is quietly following us. And I believe, as I've said, there's greatness in all of us, and it's about allowing ourselves to feel that greatness, to be that greatness. And if you need to be reminded of your own greatness, get out your journal and go back and remember all of those times in your life when you were courageous, when you were brave, when you did believe in yourself, when you did help another human being. And if you read that every day just to remind yourself of your own greatness, then you can't help but go out there and be an example to other women and men who really are searching.
I mean, this is really good stuff and such an encouragement, I think, for people to think about all of those different arenas in our life, whether it be our Facebook posts or just how we are day to day with each other. Hey, Tanya, thanks so much for being a part of the show. Always appreciate the things that we talk about. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, and you too.